The observatory stood lonely against the New Mexico sky, a sentinel of steel and glass perched atop Socorro Peak. James Harrison adjusted the massive telescope's settings with practiced precision, his weathered hands moving across familiar controls. At 45, he'd spent more nights with the stars than with people, and that's exactly how he preferred it. The night started like any other: data collection, analysis, the endless search for patterns in the cosmic dance above. But at 2:47 a.m., everything changed. The first sign was a disturbance in his readings: radiation spikes that shouldn't exist, energy patterns that defied physics. James double-checked his equipment, certain there must be an error. That's when he saw it through the observatory's wide windows: a tear in the night sky, a ripple of purple-white energy that split the darkness like lightning frozen in time. Something emerged from the rift, something that fell. James watched, transfixed, as the object, no, the figure, plummeted toward Earth, trailing sparks of impossible color. It crashed into the dense pine forest less than a mile from the observatory. The impact shook the ground, rattling his precious instruments. Common sense told him to call the authorities. Protocol demanded it. Instead, James grabbed his emergency med kit and a flashlight, then headed into the darkness. He told himself it was scientific curiosity, but deep down, he knew it was something more, a calling he couldn't explain. The crash site glowed with an ethereal light. Broken branches and scorched earth marked a trail leading to a small crater. James approached cautiously, flashlight beam cutting through lingering smoke. What he found stole his breath. She was humanoid, but clearly not human. Her skin shimmered with a subtle iridescence, like oil on water. Instead of hair, delicate tendrils that resembled fiber optic cables cascaded down her shoulders, pulsing with gentle light. She lay unconscious, curled protectively around a cylindrical device clutched to her chest. "Hello," James called softly, kneeling beside her. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes snapped open, 3 of them arranged in a triangular pattern, each the color of molten silver. She scrambled backward, fear evident in her alien features. The device in her arms hummed ominously. James raised his hands, dropping the flashlight. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you. You're injured." He gestured to the purple fluid seeping from a gash in her side. She studied him intently, head tilted at an angle that seemed just slightly wrong. When she spoke, her voice resonated like crystal singing. "Help, please," they follow. The words weren't English, but somehow James understood them. Before he could respond, she collapsed forward. He caught her, surprised by how light she felt, as if her bones were hollow. The device she carried pulsed with symbols that scrolled across its surface. Thunder rumbled overhead, but the sky was clear. James looked up and saw another tear forming in the heavens. Whatever was following her, they were coming. He made a decision that would change his life forever. With gentle urgency, he lifted the unconscious alien and hurried back toward the observatory. His quiet life of stellar observation was about to become infinitely more complicated. Inside his facility, James converted the break room couch into a makeshift bed. He treated her wound with antiseptic, noting how her blood seemed to phosphoresce under his touch. The alien technology she carried now sat on his desk, still emanating that strange hum. Occasionally, it projected holographic symbols into the air, mathematical equations that made his head spin. As he worked, James couldn't help but marvel at the situation. Years of searching the stars for signs of intelligent life, and now here she was, proof of everything he believed in. But instead of the joy of discovery, he felt only concern and a growing sense of protective urgency. More thunder shook the observatory. Through his telescope, James spotted 3 more rifts opening in the upper atmosphere. Dark shapes emerged, their forms somehow wrong, as if they absorbed the starlight around them. They were searching. The alien stirred, her triple eyes focusing on him with desperate intensity. "Hide," she whispered in that crystalline voice. "Please hide. The Void Hunters." She tried to rise but fell back, weakened. "Don't move," James said firmly, pulling old emergency blankets from a storage locker. "I have a place." The observatory's basement level housed a former Cold War fallout shelter, long since converted to storage. James helped her down the narrow stairs, trying not to think about the absurdity of the situation. Here he was, a solitary astronomer, hiding an extraterrestrial fugitive from what she called void hunters. Once she was settled in the shelter, James returned upstairs to gather supplies. Through the windows, he saw dark shapes moving through the forest, accompanied by flashes of sickly green light. His visitors' pursuers were getting closer. A loud bang echoed from the front entrance. James froze, heart pounding. Another bang, harder this time. He quickly killed all the lights and crept toward the basement access. As he reached for the door handle, a voice spoke behind him, a sound like radio static given form. "Human, we seek a fugitive. Cooperate, and your species need not suffer." James turned slowly. The figure in the doorway was tall, its form seeming to shift and flow like smoke-given substance. Where a face should be, there was only darkness and 2 points of green light. He thought of the wounded alien below, of the fear in her triple eyes, of the desperately protective way she'd held that mysterious device. In that moment, James Harrison, devoted astronomer, man of science, lifelong loner, made his choice. "Sorry," he said, forcing a confused smile. "Nobody here but me. Feel free to look around." The void hunter's green eyes flared. As more of its kind flowed into the observatory, James silently prayed he'd made the right decision. The night was far from over. The void hunters searched the observatory for 3 hours. James watched them move through his sanctuary like living shadows, their forms rippling against the starlight streaming through the dome. They examined every corner, every cabinet, every shadow, except for the basement shelter, whose entrance remained hidden behind decades-old filing cabinets and perception-deflecting technology he hadn't even known existed. When they finally left, James waited another hour before daring to check on his hidden guest. He found her sitting cross-legged on the floor, the mysterious device projecting a galaxy's worth of light patterns across the shelter's walls. Her wounds had already begun healing, leaving traces of luminescent scarring. "Thank you," she said, her crystalline voice stronger now. "I am Naira, last keeper of the Astral Archive." She gestured to the device. "You risked much to protect a stranger." James pulled up an old folding chair. "Those hunters, they called themselves void hunters. What do they want?" Naira's triple eyes dimmed slightly. "They want this." She touched the device, and its projection shifted to show a vast city of crystal spires and flowing light. "The complete knowledge of my people. Science, history, the secrets of crossing space and time." The image changed to show the same city in ruins, dark shapes moving through the devastation. The void hunters destroy civilizations, consume their knowledge, leave only darkness. My people fought them for 1,000 years. And now you're all that's left, James said softly, understanding dawning. She nodded. "The archive contains everything, including the one thing they fear, a way to destroy them. But I haven't been able to decode that knowledge. Not alone." Her tendrils rippled with color. "The archive led me here, to Earth, to this place, to you." James ran a hand through his graying hair. "Me? I'm just an astronomer. You are more." Naira stood, moving with liquid grace to the device. "Your work on quantum gravitational patterns in stellar phenomena. It mirrors our own early research into dimensional mechanics. Your mind sees patterns others miss. You could help me unlock the archive's secrets." Before James could respond, alerts flashed on his computer monitors upstairs. The motion sensors he'd installed around the observatory were triggering. He quickly checked the security feeds and felt his blood run cold. More void hunters had arrived, dozens of them, accompanied by floating machines that pulsed with sickly green energy. Nyara's expression showed no surprise, only resignation. They never give up. I should leave, draw them away. No. James surprised himself with the firmness in his voice. Running isn't the answer. You came here for help. Let me help. He gestured to the archive. Show me what you've decoded so far. Maybe fresh eyes will see something new. Over the next several hours, as void hunters prowled the mountainside, James immersed himself in the mysteries of the archive. Nyara's people, the Lumini, had achieved things that made human technology look primitive. But their knowledge was encoded in complex patterns of light and energy, requiring both scientific understanding and intuitive leaps to decrypt. Here, James said eventually, pointing to a recurring sequence in the data stream. This pattern, it's similar to the wavelength variations in pulsar emissions, but it's being modulated by something else, something familiar. Nyara leaned closer, her glowing tendrils briefly brushing his shoulder. The touch sent a tingling sensation through his arm. The secondary pattern, she whispered. It matches the background radiation of your solar system. Working together, they began unraveling the first layer of encryption. The archive responded to their combined efforts, its projections growing more complex and detailed. It showed them glimpses of Lumini history, their first steps into space, their encounters with other civilizations, their desperate war against the Void Hunters. But it was a personal log entry that changed everything. The hologram showed a Lumini explorer recording their observations of a primitive planet called Earth over 12,000 years ago. We leave these humans to develop on their own, the ancient Lumini said, but we do not leave them defenseless. In the depths of their world, in places they cannot yet reach, we have hidden gifts. Tools they may need when darkness comes. They need only the key to find them. James and Nyara stared at each other as the implications sank in. Your people left technology here, he said. Technology that might help us fight the Void Hunters. Yes, Nyara replied, her voice filled with hope and fear. But claiming it would mean revealing ourselves to your world. Are you prepared for what that could mean? Before James could answer, the ground shook with a massive impact. Dust rained from the shelter's ceiling. Through the security feeds, they watched in horror as a massive ship, like a tear in reality given physical form, descended from the clouds. The Void Hunter Prime, Nyara breathed. Their leader. They're escalating the hunt. James looked at the archive, then at the alien woman who had crashed into his ordered life and filled it with both danger and wonder. The choice seemed impossible. Risk exposing Earth to both the wonders and horrors of the wider universe, or hide and watch as the Void Hunters eventually found them. But when he met Nyara's triple-eyed gaze, saw the mix of determination and trust there, he knew there was only one real choice. Well, he said, managing a smile, I always wanted to make a groundbreaking astronomical discovery. This might be a bit more groundbreaking than I planned. He turned to his computer, fingers flying across the keyboard. I have some contacts in the scientific community who might believe us. People who can help. Nyara touched his shoulder, her gratitude flowing through the contact like warmth from a star. Outside, the Void Hunter Prime's ship cast a shadow over the observatory, and storm clouds began gathering unnaturally in the sky. The next phase of their struggle was about to begin. And this time, they wouldn't be facing it alone. The storm that wasn't a storm raged outside the observatory. James worked feverishly at his computer, sending encrypted messages to trusted colleagues, while Nyara interfaced with the archive, searching for information about her ancestors' hidden legacy on Earth. The Void Hunter Prime's ship loomed overhead like a wound in reality, periodically releasing waves of energy that made every electronic device in the facility flicker. Dr. Ramirez is responding, James announced, studying his screen. She's at the White Sands facility. Says there's something we need to see. Unusual readings from deep beneath the desert floor. Energy signatures that nothing in our technology can explain. Nyara's tendrils rippled with excitement. Show me the data. When James transferred the readings to the archive's holographic display, the device's reaction was immediate. The scrolling symbols accelerated, and a new projection appeared, a three-dimensional map of the southwestern United States, with a pulsing point of light centered on white sands. "A vault," Nyara whispered. "One of the largest my people ever created." But reaching it, she glanced at the security feeds showing the growing number of void hunters surrounding the observatory. James stood, determination hardening his features. "We have something they don't. Knowledge of the terrain. I've hiked these mountains for 20 years. There are old mining tunnels, maintenance roads they won't know about." A thunderous impact shook the building. On the screens, they watched a group of void hunters begin methodically destroying James's equipment, their shadowy forms flowing through solid matter like smoke. "They're done searching," Nyara said grimly. "Now they'll tear this place apart until they find us. Then we don't give them the chance." James pulled up a topographical map on his tablet. "There's a maintenance tunnel that connects to the old cable car system. It comes out 3 miles down the mountain. If we can reach my truck." The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in red. A sound like tearing metal echoed from above, followed by heavy impacts moving toward the basement. "Time to go." James grabbed his backpack, already loaded with emergency supplies. Nyara clutched the archive to her chest, its glow dimmed to barely a flicker. They slipped through the tunnel entrance moments before the basement door burst inward. James sealed the heavy metal hatch behind them, knowing it wouldn't hold for long. The maintenance tunnel stretched ahead, decades of dust coating the floor. "This way," he whispered, leading them deeper into the mountain. They moved as quickly as they dared through the darkness, guided only by the faint light of Nyara's natural bioluminescence. Every few minutes, distant booms echoed through the rock as the void hunters tore the observatory apart. James tried not to think about his life's work being destroyed above them. "Your work isn't lost," Nyara said softly, as if reading his thoughts. "The archive. I've been scanning your data since I arrived. Your research, your observations, they're all preserved here." Before James could respond, a violent tremor shook the tunnel. Rocks crashed down behind them as a section of the ceiling collapsed. "They're trying to collapse the tunnel network," James realized. "Cut off our escape routes." They ran now, no longer worried about stealth. The archive pulsed with warning light as the tunnel floor cracked beneath their feet. James's knowledge of the old mining system was their only advantage. Every fork, every junction was a choice between safety and disaster. They were nearly at the exit when the Void Hunter Prime made its move. The tunnel ahead of them simply ceased to exist, reality folding away to reveal the massive shadowy form of their pursuer. Its green eyes blazed like dying stars. "The archive," it said, its voice making the air itself shiver. "Submit it, and your deaths will be quick." James stepped in front of Nyara, though he knew it was a futile gesture against such power. "There's something you should know about humans," he said, reaching slowly into his pocket. "We're really good at preparing for disasters." He pulled out a small remote detonator, remnant of the tunnel system's original mining days. The charges had been in place for decades, meant to seal off unsafe sections in case of collapse. "You want to destroy knowledge." James's finger hovered over the button. "Let's destroy some." The Void Hunter Prime's form rippled with what might have been amusement. "You would die as well." "Maybe." James felt Nyara's hand slip into his free one, sending that familiar electric tingle through his arm. "But you'd lose the archive. Forever." For a moment that stretched like eternity, they faced each other, human and alien fugitive, against an entity of living darkness. Then James saw it, the slight hesitation in those green eyes. The Prime couldn't risk losing the archive. The White Sands Research Facility emerged from the desert like a mirage, its white buildings gleaming under the New Mexico sun. Dr. Isabella Ramirez met them at a side entrance, her dark eyes widening at the sight of Nyara. To her credit, the senior physicist needed only a moment to compose herself. When you said first contact, I thought you were having a breakdown, James, she said, ushering them inside. The energy reading started 3 days ago. Something activated deep underground. Something that's rewriting everything we thought we knew about physics. They hurried through empty corridors. Most of the facility had been evacuated under the pretense of a radiation leak. Above them, storm clouds gathered unnaturally fast, green lightning crackling between them. "The Void Hunters are coming," Nara said, her tendrils rippling with anxiety. "We don't have much time." Dr. Ramirez led them to a freight elevator. The readings are coming from an old nuclear storage facility, abandoned in the 1960s, but when we tried to access it, she swiped her keycard, and they began descending. "Well, you should see for yourself." The elevator dropped 20 stories underground before opening onto a vast chamber. James felt his breath catch. The nuclear storage facility was clearly nothing of the sort. The walls were covered in flowing patterns that pulsed with familiar light. Lumini technology, dormant for millennia, but now awakening. At the chamber's center stood a towering structure of crystal and light, its surface etched with the same symbols that appeared in the archive. Nayara approached it reverently, her 3 eyes wide with recognition. "A Nexus core," she breathed. "One of the most powerful devices my people ever created. It can reshape reality itself, bend space and time." She turned to James. "This is what they fear. With this, we could not just fight the Void Hunters. We could undo everything they've done." The archive floated from her hands, moving on its own to interface with the Nexus core. Holographic displays erupted around them, showing star maps, equations, and scenes from history, human and Lumini alike. "Your people didn't just leave us technology," James realized, studying the displays. "They'd been guiding our development. The mathematical principles, the scientific breakthroughs, they've been leaving breadcrumbs, preparing us for this moment." Dr. Ramirez was already taking readings with her instruments, muttering excitedly about quantum field variations. "The energy output is beyond anything we can measure. If we could understand even a fraction of this technology." The lights flickered. Alarms blared from above. "They're here," Nayara said grimly. The archive's projections shifted to show the surface, the Void Hunter Prime's ship hovering over the facility, disgorging waves of shadow forms. But something's different. They're desperate. James studied the tactical display. They're not trying to be subtle anymore. This is an all-out assault. He turned to Dr. Ramirez. "How many security personnel are still here?" "A dozen, maybe." "Against that." She gestured at the shadows pouring from the ship. "They won't last 5 minutes." The chamber shuddered as explosions rocked the surface. The Void Hunters were blasting their way down, reality warping around their attacks. Nayara's hands flew over the Nexus core's controls, the archive feeding her information faster than James could follow. "The core is capable of generating a quantum barrier, but it needs time to power it up. Decades of dormancy." She looked at him, fear and determination warring in her alien features. "James, I need your help. The core's activation sequence. It's keyed to both Luminian and human genetic patterns. A failsafe, ensuring our peoples would have to work together." Another explosion, closer this time. Through the facility's cameras, they watched security teams firing uselessly at living shadows. The Void Hunters were getting closer. "Dr. Ramirez," James said quickly, "get to the surface. Contact everyone you can trust in the government, the scientific community. The world is about to change, and we'll need voices of reason when it does." His old friend hesitated only a moment before nodding. "Don't die, James. I still have questions about your last peer review." She hurried to the elevator, already pulling out her phone. James turned back to Nayara, who stood bathed in the light of ancient technology. "What do you need me to do?" "Place your hands here." She guided him to crystalline panels on either side of her. "Our minds will need to synchronize with the core. It will be intense." The moment James touched the panels, energy surged through him like liquid fire. His consciousness expanded, merging with Mayara's alien thoughts, with the vast database of the archive, with the reality-warping power of the Nexus core itself. He saw everything: the true history of Earth, the rise and fall of the Lumini, the nature of the Void Hunters. They weren't just aliens. They were living fragments of the space between universes, drawn to knowledge and light like moths to flame, consuming it to fill their own eternal emptiness. Through their merged consciousness, Nayara shared her deepest truth. My people didn't just leave technology, James. We left part of ourselves, our very essence, encoded in human DNA. Your species carries our legacy, our potential. That's why the Void Hunters fear Earth so much. Together, we could become something entirely new. The chamber walls cracked. Dark energy poured through as the Void Hunter Prime itself phased into existence before them. Its form was massive now, a cathedral of shadows crowned with emerald fire. You cannot be allowed to unite. Its voice shook reality itself. The cycle must continue. Light falls to darkness, order to chaos. Submit or be destroyed. The Nexus core hummed with building power. Through their shared consciousness, James and Nayara worked in perfect synchronization, guided by the archive's ancient wisdom. But they needed more time, just a few more minutes to complete the activation sequence. James opened his eyes, meeting the Prime's burning gaze. You know what humanity's greatest strength is. We never learned when to quit. He began reciting astronomical calculations, complex equations about stellar decay that he dedicated his life to studying. The Prime's form rippled with confusion, then understanding as it realized what he was doing. Knowledge drew the Void Hunters like addiction, and James was offering a feast. Keep going, Nayara's voice echoed in his mind as her fingers flew across the core's controls. I'm almost there. James dredged up everything he knew: quantum mechanics, gravitational wave theory, the mathematics of black holes. The Prime drank it in helplessly, its lesser hunters drawn forward like iron filings to a magnet. Behind them, the Nexus core began to sing. The Nexus core's song built to a crescendo, its crystalline structure pulsing with waves of pure light. James continued his stream of scientific knowledge, keeping the Void Hunters transfixed even as his mind remained linked with Mayara's through the ancient machine. Together, they were more than human or Lumini. They were the bridge between two civilizations, the fulfillment of a plan millennia in the making. The Void Hunter Prime's form writhed with conflicting impulses, torn between its hunger for knowledge and its mission to prevent what was happening. You understand nothing, it thundered. We are the balance. Without darkness, light burns too bright. Without entropy, order becomes stagnation. No, Nayara's voice rang with certainty, her three eyes blazing like stars. You are fear itself. Fear of change, of growth, of different peoples coming together to become something greater. Through their merged consciousness, James saw the truth of it all. The Void Hunters weren't maintaining balance. They were parasites feeding on the death of civilizations, using philosophy to justify their hunger. And now, faced with the possibility of a truly hybrid species, humanity carrying the legacy of Lumini potential, they were terrified. The Prime lashed out with tendrils of pure darkness, trying to disrupt their connection to the core. But the barrier of light held, strengthened by the very thing that made humans unique: their ability to adapt, to take the scattered pieces of Lumini heritage, encode it in their DNA, and make it into something new. Activation sequence at 90%, James announced, his voice strained. But the containment field is failing. If it collapses before full power, then we all die, Nayara finished. Her fingers danced across the core's controls, making adjustments faster than human eyes could follow. The archive is showing me something, a way to stabilize the field, but she hesitated. It would require a direct neural interface. At this power level, it would burn out any living mind. James saw the decision in her eyes before she made it. No. He reached for her, but his hands couldn't leave the control panels without disrupting the activation sequence. There has to be another way. The Void Hunter Prime laughed, a sound like glass breaking in reverse. See how they fall. All light dims. All hope fades. It is the way off. Oh, shut up. A new voice cut through the chamber. Dr. Ramirez stood in the elevator doorway, flanked by figures in environmental suits. You talk too much for a cosmic horror. She held up a strange device cobbled together from what looked like spare parts and pure desperation. Hey James, remember that theory you had about using quantum field manipulation to stabilize exotic particle reactions? She threw the device. It arsed through the air, trailing sparks of improvised genius. Nyara caught it, her eyes widening as she understood its purpose. Human ingenuity, she breathed. You never cease to amaze. She slammed the device into the core's main interface. Raw power surged through the chamber. The device shouldn't have worked. It was built from primitive technology with only the vaguest understanding of the principles involved. But that was humanity's gift. The ability to make the impossible possible through sheer determination and creativity. The Nexus Core's song reached its peak. Reality itself began to bend. No. The Prime's form expanded, trying to engulf the entire chamber. You will not. Light exploded outward. James felt the power flow through him, through Nara, through the quantum-touched DNA of every human on Earth. The Void Hunter Prime screamed as its darkness was pierced by millions of points of light, not just the pure energy of Lumini technology, but the chaotic, beautiful, unpredictable light of human potential. When James could see again, the chamber was transformed. The Void Hunters were gone, not destroyed but banished to the spaces between universes, sealed away by power they had never imagined possible. The Nexus Core hummed contentedly, its light now a gentle glow. And Nyara. She stood facing the core. Her form changed. The energy surge had awakened something dormant in her cells. Her bioluminescence now shifted through spectrums visible and invisible, and when she turned to James, her three eyes held galaxies. It worked, she said with wonder. The Archiv's final protocol. Not just banishing the Void Hunters, but completing the merger. I am become something new, James, as will others in time. Dr. Ramirez stepped forward, her scientist's curiosity overcoming her awe. The radiation from the core, it's activating dormant genes in human DNA. The Lumini legacy, a gift from my ancestors to yours, Nyara confirmed. The power to grow, to change, to become more than either of our species ever were alone. She held out her hand to James, light dancing between her fingers. Together. James took her hand, feeling that familiar electric tingle, stronger now. Above them, through the facility's cameras, they could see news helicopters circling, military vehicles approaching. The world was about to change forever. What happens now? Dr. Ramirez asked, already pulling out her phone to contact colleagues. James looked at Nara, seeing in her transformed features the future of two civilizations. Now we build something new, something beautiful. He squeezed her hand. Together. The Nexus Core pulsed in agreement, its light spreading outward like ripples in the cosmic ocean. Around the world, humans would begin to discover changes in themselves, the awakening of ancient potential. There would be fear, confusion, wonder, but also hope. Always hope. And in a chamber deep beneath the New Mexico desert, a man who had spent his life studying the stars held hands with a woman who had crossed space and time to find him. Their light mingled, human and Lumini, past and future, science and wonder. The next chapter was just beginning.